Oh, status. You'll be live soon. Ooh. Okay, it says we're
Go to
live.
session. So session is where they will type their questions and comments. They could also do it in the Q&A section, whatever you prefer.
Gotcha.
Or both, but just be sure whenever you open it up for questions that you check both the chat and the Q&A, because sometimes people pick and choose. So.
Oh. Okay. I think we're live. I think we're good. Alan, could you speak again? I couldn't hear you. I can't hear you. Mm-mm.
Of course,
Lug.
as soon as we
Yeah,
go
I mean,
live.
like, such is life. Mm-mm.
Maybe try leaving and coming, plugging and unplugging.
Oh yeah. Well, welcome everybody. Well, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, which is, standard. But we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna get Alan and I back on this and get started. Still can't. Nope.
You read your lips though, so I know what you said.
Ricky was helping us out earlier and we were all good, and then now all of a sudden we're not. Mm-mm.
Well, how's UTD?
UT's been great. I can't complain.
Okay. Are we back?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful. Okay. Sorry about that, y'all.
Great. All right, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Trisha Harrison, and I'm an Assistant President's Director at Arlington Hall at UTA in Arlington. Alan Delaney and Louis Edwards here today, which I'm very excited to see them because they're from my alma mater, and I was there like ever. I was there for a really long time, so it's kind of a little reunion. But today they'll be presenting on way, and I will be dropping in the chat the survey that everyone should fill out. So I'll put that in after the presentation. Glad to have everyone here today. Take it
away. Lovely. Thank you so much, Risha. All right. I will share my screen, and y'all know technology is already failed me once, so hopefully everyone can see. Can you see? Louis can confirm for me.
I can see.
Beautiful. All right. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to DIY Proposals. And so basically, we're just going to talk about how to appropriately and effectively propose ideas and solutions to those stakeholders and decision makers within your organization. And so just a little bit about us. My name is Alan Delaney. I am from Houston, Texas, and I received my bachelor's in human relations and minor communication from the University of Oklahoma, Boomer, and my master's in higher education administration and supervision from the University of Houston. Go Cougs. And I have worked at the University of Houston, University of North Texas, and I am now a residential life coordinator at the University of Texas at Dallas, working with upper class graduate students. And I enjoy the pursuit of knowledge, both purposeful and frivolous. So with as a means to an end, as well as just for no reason other than I may walk into a random trivia game one day. I enjoy food, the consumption, but not the preparation. I do not enjoy cooking, but I enjoy the fruits of others' labors there. I enjoy musicals, show tunes, all things of that sort, and awkward humor a la Bob's Burgers and things of that nature.
And then my name is Louis Edwards. My hometown is in Wisconsin, right on Lake Superior, Bayfield, Ashland. I consider both of them my hometowns. I grew up in both. And then I got a Bachelor of Arts in Music and a minor in Business Administration from UW Stevens Point. From there, I trekked down a little south to Kansas, where I got my master's in higher education administration. Since then, I've worked at Texas State, and now I'm also here at UT Dallas. I enjoy Pokemon Go. Maybe love it a little too much. Keeps me walking, essentially, which has been very, very delightful. I also share the same passion of music that Alan has, more playing and listening. So currently, I'm listening to all the new Eurovision songs for 2021. That's going to be in Rotterdam. Super excited. A lot of songs have been happening in March because they're dropping their song choice. So it's really fun to get to see what's going on around the world. I do enjoy traveling as well. Let's kind of stop though. That was a lot of pre-COVID stuff. And then I enjoy eating as well. I also like to cook, but if I am going to eat out, I try to always to eat local. That's kind of the goal. I like to get that local flair. Now that you know a little bit about us, let's roll into it.
Indeed. So our learning outcomes. So participants, that is you, will be able to, by the end of our time together, recognize the primary elements of a professional proposal, so what that foundation should consist of, understanding the why, the when, and the how to submit a proposal, and then identifying and exploring proposal ideas within your professional environment. And so some ideas you may already be thinking about, and that's why you just decided to join us here today. This may be some inspiration for you to identify things in the future that you may propose solutions for. And so as we're working through together, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A, comments in the chat, snaps. We appreciate compliments too. And then this is always, this is a community, even though we are virtual, y'all know the community is our thing. So always, showing support for those who drop comments as well, and then just sharing the knowledge that we have in the room.
So we have broken down the proposal into 4 major elements. And so there are obviously things that go into each of these elements, but all proposals should state the problem. This is going to be your why. Why are we writing this proposal? Because there's this going on, or there is not this going on. What is your problem? Benchmarking, and now this one is optional because you may be looking at other institutions, you may be looking at other facets of life, or even within your university, there may be different offices that are operating similarly, or you aspire to operate like. And then after stating the problem, we're looking at that, presenting the solution, which is going to include a lot of details. And so we're going to go deeper into these main elements throughout the proposal.
Absolutely. So firstly, that stating of the problem. And so this is the why. Why are you seeking to change something? What is the problem? And so when you present it, you want to present that specific problem, as specific as you can. And so not kind of like a vague, like, oh, I don't like the way this is working. Let's kind of work a way towards a solution. It's like, what is the stated problem? And then what is for the solution that you're proposing, and then keeping that professional and objective. Typically, sometimes when we are addressing problems or identifying problems, it may be something that we have firsthand experience with. A process didn't go as smoothly as we wanted it to go, or there's kind of information missing from somewhere that it should have been that kind of affected us personally or professionally. And so when you are proposing your solution or writing your proposal, you want to be as objective and as unbiased as you can. And so though it may be inspired by a professional occurrence or event that you experienced, you want this to be, objective as you are writing the document. And then knowing your audience. So who's going to see this proposal? Who are you submitting it to? Who is it going to affect? And so always when you are writing a proposal, you're keeping that institutional and departmental mission, goals, and priority at the forefront of whatever it is. And so you want your solution to align with those objectives. If it doesn't align with the objectives, then we have to question, and likely whoever you're submitting the proposal to is going to question, well, if this doesn't align with our objectives and our mission and goals, then is this really a solution that is viable for us, for our institution, and for our department? And so knowing your audience, kind of writing with your audience in mind, and then making sure that that solution does align so that it has a more likely chance of getting implemented. And then including any other pertinent information. And so really here, you're just stating, painting a picture, so to speak, of what the current situation is. So what current budget is being spent on whatever problem you're trying to address? What's the current structure? What is the history of the problem? When was the last time it was evaluated? Why is it the way it is now? Do you know why? If you don't, then you should discover why. And there may be a reason there that will help you seek that understanding to then propose a better solution moving forward.
Some example whys could be as simple as our student staff are not compensated equally or the same depending on placement. Another example could be, which we have some proposals on these whys, and so that's why I'm kind of going over it a little bit now. So another example could be our online documentation says this about how our mailrooms and desks operate. However, in practice, that is not the case. And so have a kind of distill it all into one sentence of your why, and then continue to explain. So moving on, benchmarking. So this is kind of that optional if necessary, because it could help out, and then sometimes your why or the problem you've identified doesn't need benchmarking. But if you are, and if it is needed, be thinking that our big decisions shouldn't be made in a silo. So what are our local institutions or other departments, what are they doing, and consider those actions. If there is something that's already going on at another university that is loved and liked, because maybe you are brand new to this university because you have just gotten hired, or because you're now bringing those talents that you had over there, now they're over here. And so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's just about seeing how that existing wheel can then be seen through the lens of the new institution that you're working at. You want to also be thinking particularly important to when there's money involved. So with the scenario of the why of our PAs or our student staffs are not being paid the same or compensated the same, what are other institutions doing? So you can benchmark against them to kind of see like, well, if they're all doing this and we align here, that can help then further implore what the proposal could include to move forward as the solution. And we can't stress enough about researching. So maybe there are other aspects that are needed in here. So maybe there's applicable theories that you want to also kind of include in your well-rounding of the problem and in the well-rounding of the solution. And then what data exists, what resources are available on campus or just overall, and then seek out those experts. So that would be people like your supervisor or maybe someone who has been there for a minute, because they will be able to give you that history of like, here's where we started, here's where we're at, and here's when the last time this was looked at, those kind of avenues. So like seek out those people before kind of moving forward with your solution and or even the problem. Is this even a problem?
Absolutely. So then we get to the fun part. So here's the proposal, right? So present your solution. Whatever idea that you've had, you're like, this would fix whatever the problem is. This is where you flesh it out. So this is the what and the how behind the changes that you seek to make, or you and your group, whoever you're working with, seek to make. And so first is the vision. So just like you painted a picture of what the problem is, this is where you paint the picture of the solution. And so what's the final goal? What is that going to look like? How is that going to work? And then give options if you're able to. Sometimes, the first proposal doesn't quite fly, right? They say, okay, go back, rework this. And so you can kind of be proactive in that. So you give multiple options for the proposal. So you give your, your top tier, like this is it. Like I think this will solve all of our problems. And then it's like, okay, but maybe option A is a little costly. Maybe I don't know if they'll go for all that. So then you give that option B. It's like, okay, this would also address the problem that we have addressed, but it costs less, or it takes fewer human resources, or there's some other difference that maybe makes it less costly in some way. And so you have 2 or 3 options that they can choose from. And so it's not just an all or nothing type of situation. And then if they say no, then you have to rework the whole thing. But it's more so, giving feedback, giving some grace here and there with some leniency and flexibility. So it's more likely that once you present multiple options, at least one of those will work, or you'll have less work to do on the back end to present the proposal the next time around. And then the benefits. So how does this solution address the problem? So just like we talked about that specificity and what is the problem, this is the specificity and what is the solution and how does it directly correlate to the problem that you've identified. And then those deliverables. So how will the solution be administered? This is brass tacks, logistics. How is this going to work? This is where you take it kind of like from theory to practice in a sense. So this is a great idea. This is, we know we have this problem. This is the idea for the solution. But how will this really work day in and day out? How will it change certain people's responsibilities? How will it change, our balance sheet? How does it change? What do we need to change on the website, perhaps, that will reflect the changes of the solution, and who all is involved in that process? And so this is where you kind of map out the process from beginning to end to make sure that you don't miss any steps of what's necessary before execution. And then those success criteria. So how do we know the solution is effective? How will we know it worked? We can say this is a problem, this is a solution, boom, got it, done. But then how do we know? And so that's where you specify kind of with those deliverables, how will it be administered? How do we know we've reached the goal? And if necessary, how can we implement those assessment and feedback loops on the back end to make sure that it's continual improvement is happening if necessary, and to make sure that everything is satisfied and the problem is truly solved by this proposed solution. And then consider the stakeholders. So again, who does this impact? And when you sketch out those deliverables, you should also see where those stakeholders are. So if we're proposing a solution for, say, the Department of Residential Life, right? Does that include your student staff? Does it include the hall director, coordinator, community director? Does that include the assistant? Or how far up does this go? How does it include other and impact other departments outside of your own? And so when you think of the whole picture of the solution, you're able to see, okay, who does this affect, and how will they know what has changed? And how do we communicate that? So really, in you're presenting the solution, you really want to take yourself step by step through the process, through whatever you're presenting, to make sure you don't miss anything and are able to include that in your proposal, so you can be proactive with any questions that might come at you as you're proposing it. Because you don't want to necessarily, when you're presenting your proposal and they say, well, have you thought of this? You don't want to say no. You want to have thought of that, even if it's not literally written down in your proposal. Ideally, it would be, but even if it's not, you want to be able to say, yes, I have thought about that, and that's how we would work through it. Oh, next one, or anything to add?
No, go on.
Let's do it.
So let's talk about some more details that could be added to your proposal. So this would be data analysis, aggregate and disaggregate, the cost. So how much more or less is the solution? So this is going to be including that budget. So do you have access to the budget? Can you kind of see it? And therefore, while knowing the budget, how it's broken down, that can help give you about like, well, okay, here's the total amount, and like, how could we redistribute it? All those kind of thoughts can be happening if you're able to get hands on what the budget is. Human resources, so that kind of goes back to like, what is already in existence here? And are there other things that we can gather from other areas to include in your proposal? The other things that you can consider is the timing. So progress milestones and implementation dates. So if you're including it in here, it's like, okay, we're putting this proposal in for fall 2022, or we want to start this for spring 2023, or we want this to happen, you insert the date. We want to have a rollout date. And maybe within that rollout date, you also have included beforehand of like, okay, and here's when we tell this population. Maybe this is when we tell this population. So you have buy-in before you have the ultimate implementation of what you are seeking to happen. So like maybe this is where we tell our student staff, this is when we tell our professional staff, this is when we tell our professional leadership. So like getting that already included in your proposal can be fleshing out when the implementation date is. And so then that way, if there are things that need to be improved upon, or as you know, like Alan and Louis have Alan and I have worked on proposals together. So we knew that like, okay, our two brains have come up with this. Now it's time to open it up to other people and then have them look it over and see what's going on. And then now it's time to present to this population. So like there was a very clear track about what we were trying to do and try to include more minds into the proposal to get more people behind it. And so like that's what we mean by kind of like the implementation dates and timing. So like who is needing to be included at when, and kind of have that already fleshed out between any to be thinking about that beforehand. And then there's assessment and feedback. And so I kind of talked about that feedback loop about like, okay, we come up with this, shoot it to your supervisor. Come up with this, shoot it to the team you're working with. We've come up now with this, now we're going to go to this larger aspect. And so getting that feedback. And then assessment is a little bit different because it can also include your solution, also includes like, okay, so in 3 years, we're going to reassess what we have done. So including that, not only like, here's what we're trying to do for the immediate future, but also we have a long-term plan of when we need to revisit this. So to go back to kind of the thought process of our student staff compensation, it was kind of like, here's when the last time it was thought about, here's what we want to do here for the future. And also we should revisit this when this amount of time has passed. So then that way there is the larger picture of this is not a one and done conversation, because sometimes your proposal or what your issue or the why is not a immediate now. It could be also it's immediate now, and it's going to be again an issue as time goes forward. So making sure that your proposal can also include that larger long-term plan of like, here's when we're going to revisit, and here's who should be revisiting it in that time. So sometimes not only saying like, we should revisit that proposal in 4 years, but also add it and include, we should revisit this in 4 years, and here's who should start that conversation. So then that way, it's already been somewhat assigned to a group of people, or maybe a person who can like help make sure that the proposal that is put in now is going to be seen again in the future, to make sure that those changes are still always thought about as time progresses.
Absolutely. Beautifully said, Louis.
Thank you. Okay. When, why, and how. So aka time, place, and matter. So we haven't really talked about it, but sometimes the problem you see, is it a problem? So be thinking about that before you even start this lovely train of writing a proposal, because guess what? A proposal should take time. So is it a problem? Be thinking about that. And so that's where your colleagues, where sometimes even your staff or even your supervisor can be like, I see this. Is this a problem? Is this a thing? I see that this could be worked out or be more efficient, or maybe if we did this, that could happen. But realistically, should I be going down this train? So like, what is the battles that you should be picking? Because time is precious. And so like, to be putting a lot of front effort on something that's already going to be a no, like let's have that conversation early ahead of time, so you know when to pick and choose what's going on. Come about it from the perspective of seeking to understand and then to be understood. So like having that conversation of like, I'm seeing this globally in our area. Tell me more about it. Tell me about the history that you know about it, and or who can I find out more information about that? So like, let me get the full picture, because I see this as an issue, but there may have been a lot of very intentional decisions to come to this where I don't know that yet. And so like, let me try to figure out how did we get here? And then now that I understand how we got here, here's where I think we could go. And do you think that's possible? If I write up something in a proposal form, do you think that would be somewhere where we could go? Sometimes even just having that conversation, you won't even need to write a proposal. Sometimes you do. And so it's all about, let's have that communication about what you are seeing and then talking with those people who are the experts or the people who know who the experts are to like get that rolling. So when you're talking to a supervisor, live that dream as far as getting through that done. So also, as I kind of alluded to earlier, we want to get that green light before putting in the work. So I see this as an issue. I think we can go here. Is it okay if I write something up that would kind of fully flesh that out? And then maybe you get the thumbs up and then you go forward with it. Now, if you get the thumbs down, this is where we can ask those why questions to kind of like going back to seeking to understand. Because at that point, you don't know. And then submission standard and approval hierarchy. So these are other things that are going to be very specific to your institution that you're working at. So if you put in a proposal, who's it going to go to? Who does it need to go to? And knowing what that chain of command looks like for you. In some institutions, it could be like this, it could be like that. And so like knowing intimately what it is at your institution, so then if you're going to put all this time and effort in, you know exactly who the audience is who's going to be seeing it, and you know where it needs to go. So then you're not just like putting their proposal together and then kind of sending it to the incorrect people. Like you have to know who the movers and shakers are and who those movers and shakers are, how they like to get information.
Absolutely. And so also keeping in mind what is appropriate. And so kind of piggybacking off of what Louis said is what's the history of this problem? And is it appropriate to propose a solution? There may have been a kind of a robust process to put this situation or process or whatever it is that you're proposing a solution for into motion. And it may be a significant shift to move away from that. And so you really want to consider the context of whatever it is that you are, the problem that you're identifying, as well as the solution, the context and the implications and the consequence after you do get this ball rolling. And then read the proverbial room, you know, like I said, like read the room, see if this is something that needs to be done right now. This is the time, place, manner conversation. We're you know, kind of familiar with that term. And so we want to make sure that whatever we bring to the table is going to be well received at that time, if this is the right place for it, and am I presenting it in a manner that is going to be, you know, accepted or at least received to be considered. And so if it's not the time, you know, maybe not. Right now we're in COVID, right? Budgets are tight, occupancies may be low. This may not be the time to propose something that's going to be costly, that's going to be a significant investment on the front end. It can be a wonderful solution to a problem that you have, and it could, you know, be something that could, like I said, be an investment for semesters and years to come. But if right now isn't the time to propose that, you don't want to necessarily, you know, propose it now and then cast that solution in a bad light and then jeopardize the future of it being accepted. And so maybe, you know, bide your time, and so to speak, and then waiting for that time when it may be a better time, a better context for you to present. One of the, as Louis alluded to, we're going to do some example proposals later, and I'm going to show y'all an example of a proposal that failed miserably that I put in because it was just not the right time, place, and manner. And so like all of these lessons that we are sharing, they are from experience, and we hope that you do better than we have done in the past. And so the part of that is that reading the room and making sure that that's something that is going to be palatable at that time. And then do you have the time and resources? Like you said, proposals, she take a lot of time. And if you don't have the time, then you don't necessarily want to propose it perhaps at that time, because your proposal, your responsibility. It's not necessarily that you want to say, I think this would be a great solution, now you go take care of that. It's going to say, this is a solution, and I'm willing to do the work it takes to bring this to fruition and to execute it properly. And if you don't have that time to execute it properly, then it may be something that you might want to scale back your solution to something that you can handle at that time, or you just want to pick a different time to where whatever's necessary for you to bring it to fruition, you're able to fully do that. And not everything, like we said before with the benchmarking, is done in a silo. You want to have that support system too. And so we'll talk about that PA compensation proposal that we're mentioning. And it was a team of 3. It was Louie and I and another one of our colleagues. And then we also got the support of all the other coordinators in our department before bringing it to that next step. And so you not only want to have that team of people who you're working with directly on the proposal, but you also want to have the support of those who perhaps didn't work on the proposal, but are those stakeholders that it's going to significantly impact them or their staffs or the other, entities that they're working with. And so making sure, you're able to carry this if you're going to be the one that proposes it, you and your team, and that you have the support of those significant people who are going to be most impacted by that proposal, because you certainly don't want to propose something that may be a solution to a problem, but is going to significantly increase the workload of someone without their prior consent or their prior knowledge and support of that solution.
Right on.
And now
we have some sample proposals. Okay. So this is where you're gonna learn from us of things that we have done. Okay. Can you make that a little bit larger, please?
I can. I think it might cut off just a little. Oh, hold on.
Okay.
That was, let me see if there's a 175.
So as Alan's doing that,
Boom.
This is a proposal that I put together when I was at Texas State. To give you a little bit of the background, what was going on is that complexes were being built. And as they were built, what had happened is that there was a front desk and then mailroom. Well, every other hall had front desk and mail to be together. With these new complexes, it was like there was a front desk and then there was a separate mailroom. And so the issue that was coming about is well, we have this mailroom, what are the hours of it and how they operate? And each pairings of hall directors kind of came up with their own plan, and it was not regulated. And so a new hall was built, a new complex was built. The 2 residence directors got together and well, here's how we will tackle mailroom in this area. A new complex was built. Here's how we're going to tackle mailroom. And so each of these 3 complexes at the time had a different set of rules and operations about their mailroom and how it'll be open. Now the front desk was very clear about what was going on and how it was operated and open, but the mailroom was a little bit different. And so I saw that as an issue, as when we looked online at Texas State's website, it said that all front desks and mailrooms are operational of this time to this time. And so I was why don't we get them all on the same page? And so this first kind of slide, or first page of it, is kind of outlining the problem. Now I've also included, we'll go through this briefly, and we'll include this at the end. We'll be also sending all of our documents to SOCUHO Programming Committee. And from what we understand, anything that we submit to them you will have access to. So you will have access to these sample proposals that we have put together. So if you didn't get a full read of it while we're going through it right now, you will get a full read of it later. And if you don't get a full read of it, mama, you have our contact information. We'll be happy to send it to you. So kind of major parts of this first page is kind of talking about the budget. So what was the current budget of all those halls, what was going on, and then kind of talking about the differences. There's an asterisk where since there was too many resident assistants or student staff for the desk hours, how they made up it was having 2 people work at the desk at certain points of the day, just to make sure that every student staff member was working X amount of hours. And so that's what the asterisk kind of means. And then at the very, very end, it talks about how much money was going to the additional student staff who were not peer advisors. And so if I were to redo this, I would include kind of those blips of the on what was said online, because when I was rereading this, I was oh, there's some improvement, and that's where it could be. Now, going into the next page, or the next kind of parts of this proposal, is I split up into different options, kind of taking in different scenarios. So the bullet points at the top, which for option 1, there are 5. So I was what if we did this, and this is how it would look on budget tree? So then we have another spreadsheet of what the budget could look like for option 1, and you scroll a little bit down, because as it would affect desk, it would also influence when the mailroom worker would be there and also on call. And so I was here's what weekends could look like as well. And then if we roll on to option number 2, I was here's another set of parameters if this has to happen, well, here's how this could look like. And so here's another bracket of the budget. And then once again, as it does affect on call during the weekends, here's what weekends could look like for this scenario. In this scenario, we were having only mailroom workers. Like, what if only mailroom workers we want to work during the weekends? Well, here's how that could look like by having the desk be fully staffed and also the mailroom be fully staffed. And then in the third option, another set of parameters was set. Well, what if we did this, or what if this is the lens that we're looking through to find the solution to this problem? And then once again, I have another bracket of what it would look like with the budget. And then also option 3 also has, well, here's what could happen if the mailroom. So this one kind of operates under the standard of different hours during the weekend for the mailroom, having it only open a little bit less. So I typed this all together and I sent it forward. And then what I didn't include in here was kind of, in this proposal was kind of like the implementation plan, but I kind of had in my head a vision about how I felt like this could be implemented. And so an option was selected, I believe it was option 2. And then I started working with the residence directors of those particular halls. And it's like, okay, here's how we're moving forward because we have this problem, and here's kind of like the solution that has been approved by the upper people. And so that's kind of one example of a full proposal with options. And once again, you'll have this a little bit later, so you can fully look at it. And then we have another proposal to share with y'all, which is our peer advisor composition proposal. And this was here at UT Dallas. And this one, a lot of love was poured into this one.
A lot of love. And those time and resources that we talked about before. So this one was kind of, it was, like I said, a lot of love, so much that it deserved a table of contents. And so as we roll through, basically, it was, here we go with the statement of the problem. And so essentially the problem here was that folks were hired to work the same position, but were compensated differently depending on their placement. And so here in our proposal or picture, painting the picture of that problem, we had, okay, well, let's break it down. What are the numbers? What are the differences here? And then there's a lot of math in this. Sometimes, when there's budget involved, you want to give that clear picture. You want to give the totals and the breakdowns, and so that it's clear exactly what you're trying to change on the back end. And so when you have a lot of data, you want to also draw the eye, because as we were working through this, it's like, all right, this is a lot of information. Let's color code some things. And so we know, we can tell the reader exactly what we're referring to as we walk through. And so we just outlined kind of all right, there we go. The compensation based on their specific placement, and then what the differences were for the bottom line. And then, doing what the specific difference is. And then we had different categories, right? So this first one was, the inequality that perhaps is there, keeping up with those times. And so getting specific with those problems, and not just stating the whole problem as one thing and one solution. If there are minute kind of differences or different elements that you're trying to address, you want to break those down and address them almost as different problems within, especially if the solution is addressing multiple problems, perhaps. And then again, kind of with meal plan usage, the data. So making sure that data is there. And we talked about aggregated and disaggregated. So this is the aggregated data. This is kind of the overarching, what is used, what is not, on a holistic standpoint. But there's an appendix included in here that breaks down each individual usage, each student, each resident, or each student staff member. And so if you wanted to, you could go through and be specific and pick out individuals based on low percentage usage, high percentage. And so you provide all of that data just so whoever is the decision maker or the person reading it can pick and choose what they want to utilize. But you still want to make sure that the eye is drawn, that you're making that clear statement or clear problem and picture within all of that data, because you don't want it to get lost even though you're providing a lot of information.
In this part, we
And
also
then more
worked with a
math.
campus
Go ahead.
partner. Oh, it's like in this part, we also worked with a campus partner, our dining facility. And so kind of like getting the data that they had, because we wanted to know, we're providing this to some of our student staff members, which is the meal plan. Well, how are they using it? Is it being, how are they using it was essentially our question. And then we were able to gather data from as far back as spring 2017. And they gave us a lot of data, and we had to make sense of it. And so this is our making sense of that data.
Absolutely. And then whatever data you are collecting, making sure that then in turn supports the solution that you're trying to propose. Because here it was, meal swipe usage versus meal money. Well, we see meal swipe usage was significantly lower than meal money. So it wasn't necessarily that we were trying to change what was provided, but maybe the way in which it was provided based on the data that we collected and aggregated what it showed. And then again, just going back to that data and proposing. No, we're not to the proposal yet. We're still stating the problem. And then there's more math, a lot of data. And then we get down to the vision. So this is our proposal of solution. And so we said, okay, so this is how, based on the data that we've collected and what both quantitative and qualitative that we also got from individuals who were in the position, this is the vision of what we propose and what that would look like. And so kind of similarly to the way that we stated the problem, we say, well, this is what it would look like with our stated solution. And so we're able to make that comparison. And then just getting more into the weeds of making sure we're being detailed, that specificity. We're specific in the problem, we need to be specific in the solution and how our solution addresses it. And then where you get your data from, because that is important as well. As Louis said, we collaborated with our campus partners to make sure that we had this included, and so we want to make sure that we back that up and include it in the proposal and those resources. And then again, more just different specific parts, because we broke down the problem, we've got to break down the solution and identify how each part specifically ties back. And then including that timeline. And so we wrote this in last school year. And so we were looking forward to the next school year, but this may be something that, we give our ideal, and then we have that conversation with the stakeholders and the decision makers to see, okay, what's a viable timeline, and get that feedback within that conversation as well. And then breaking down that cost, as we mentioned before, and what is missing kind of from this proposal and what we would have done differently looking back is that we didn't have that benchmarking element. We should have had benchmarking because this is a significant amount of cost. Now, granted, we worked out a zero cost proposal. So and whenever possible, you want to minimize the impact that this is going to have, because quite frank, and this isn't anything, not just in higher education, but the less something is going to cost, the more likely you're going to say yes. Even personally, the less something is going to cost me, the more likely I'm going to be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's go for it. And so you want to break down that cost and make sure that it's very clear how much and what difference. Is it going to save money? Is it going to break even? Or is it going to cost us more? And if possible, where that is coming from, if you're able to collaborate and get that information, as many details as you can include. And then the final parts of, if there's something additional that perhaps would be, this is kind of an option too, right? So before we outlined the solution, this will address the problem in and of itself. But then this is kind of an option too of, if we are able to spend more, our base proposal was zero budget, net zero, I guess is what I'm looking for. But this is a part that would cost something additional, but would add to the equity of the position. And so this is kind of an option too, as Louis was talking about in his first proposal. And that would just take us to, a full equity. And so then we get to the appendices, and this is just a lot more data, and it is a sea of data in all of our disaggregated. And those are the things that we are going to remove before we share it with you. But this will be available for you to look through as well. And so this is kind of a more mathematical, labor-intensive proposal, but just to show you that you want to include as many details as you can. And then, like I said, looking back, we would have included that benchmarking data from other institutions. We could have made this a little more user-friendly, easier to read, because there was so much data included in it. And then, yeah, I mean, Louis, what else do you think we would have done differently this time around?
The other things that we included in this in this proposal is that we also did a lot of town halls with our current student staff, to make sure of just like, we just kind of sat down, and the first question we asked was, what do you think of PA compensation? What do you think of your student staff compensation? And then just getting their thoughts, and that helped guide us also to where we need to do research and where push and give could occur. And so that, and then when we came up with a kind of a draft of the proposal, we went back to that group, where we had standing meetings on Fridays, where PAs could get together. Our student staff is called peer advisors, and so the PAs would get together, and we were like, okay, we're on the agenda. Here's what we took your thoughts on, and we've now fleshed it out into this. What do you think? So we got more feedback from the current staff at the time. So this wasn't made in a silo. This wasn't just an idea that was like kind of sparred by Alan and myself. It was an idea that was brought to us by our current staff at the time. And we're like, well, we're going to roll with this. And then we kept that communication chain rolling between us and them, and made it a we. And then once we got them on board about kind of like taking their thoughts and synthesizing it down and working with getting that data with campus partners, then it became a larger conversation. And then as you look at the very, very top of this proposal, as Alan had said, is that not only it was written by 3 of us, but we did do a presentation to our colleagues, and then we got them all, we asked them, would you be willing to sign this document as well? We did kind of 2 meetings with them, one with like a little bit of draft, and then we made a little bit of revisions, and then we had the support of our full team of this proposal before moving forward. So it's not, once again, not a silo. We're including as many voices and getting their stamp of approval. So then the proposal in our eyes had a little bit more clout. It wasn't just like a singular idea. It was a group's idea at that point.
Absolutely. And as Louis mentioned, kind of with those, we got the ideas from the students, from our student staff, and then we brought it back to them. And then we, kind of like I mentioned in the footnotes, right? Minutes are available upon request, right? So having that data, quantitative or qualitative, to go back to and say, if you want to learn more about what they thought about this and what their impressions were, we have that data as well. And so providing all of the resources that you can to go back in and kind of back up whatever it is that you are proposing, then showing that stakeholder buy-in.
If necessary. It depends on your
necessary. Why. Exactly. Absolutely. This one was a little significant, so we want to make sure we had as much of that support system as we possibly could. Cool. And then just this last one. So this was my flop proposal, but I thought it was important to show, just to show, you know, it's important to have that buy-in. And so I've always been a fan of proposals personally. I think they're very important. I think that's how things can move along in the, you know, it's one thing to say like, oh, I have this idea, but to fully flesh it out, to fully identify the problem, present the solution. And so after I, you know, near the beginning of my time here at UTD, I submitted the proposal committee, a proposal. I thought I was clever. So this is basically a stating of what I saw the problem, vision, benefits, just as we talked about in the presentation, those deliverables, success criteria, and then how we were going to approach it and the cost. And so essentially all it was establishing a committee that would be dedicated to writing proposals. And so whenever someone had an idea or, you know, proposed a solution to a problem, this committee would flesh it out. They would, ask those questions. They would assist in, at the time we were revising our residential curriculum. And so they would assist in writing lesson plans and just those things that required a little more legwork or more hands makes less work. And so this committee was intended to be that in order to move our department forward in a positive manner. Now, here's what happened. I did not run this through my supervisor. That's going to be the first thing that, we want to, I did all this, didn't even ask my supervisor. So it was, in a way, I left them out of the loop, right? I was proposing these things that were supposed to be implemented on a departmental level, but I didn't even take the first step. I was just like, oh, this is a great idea. I'm going to do this proposal. It's going to be great. Worst they could say is no. No, the worst that could happen is like, all right, no, there's a different way to do this. And so you always want to include your supervisor on that. You want to, get the input, have that support system. I did this in a silo. And so, and I was new in the position. And so I hadn't learned the historical context, the foundation, why things were the way they were. I was proposing a committee that other people would be involved with, but I didn't ask anybody else if they wanted to be involved in the committee or if they had time to dedicate to it. I just knew that it was something I wanted to do. I figured, it would be something that would be beneficial, but I never asked. And so going through and making sure that I made sure it was aligned with the departmental and institutional objectives, but because I created it in a silo and without that context and historical knowledge, it didn't go anywhere. And even if it might have been a good solution, it wasn't going to gain much traction because I hadn't had those foundational parts first. And so that's why, even though we put that slide at the end, talking about, is this really a problem? Consult your supervisor, make sure it's, it is done in a way where you have that support system and you own your proposal. Even though it was at the end, you'll see in our handout that we have it as a takeaway for you from this presentation, that's going to be at the top, because those are things that you need to consider before you make any time and spend any time and make any moves with moving forward with your proposal, because you want to make sure that you don't spend all this time creating a document that's not going to go anywhere, no matter how good your idea is. And so I just wanted to share this one. We will add that as well. But as you know, everything is not a success, and we learn as we go along the way. And we certainly hope that during our time together, that we have shared some things with you all that will help you avoid missteps like these and go straight into a successful proposal, and making sure that you have the support, the buy-in of your department, of your supervisor, and of those stakeholders that would be affected by that.
At this point of the presentation, we were hoping to do some more discussion-based stuff, but we have recently found out that the technology is we get to speak with you, but you are unable to speak with us, but you can type with us. And so any questions that you have going forward, or anything about the presentation itself, or maybe about some of the proposals that you got to see a little bit today, we're happy to field those with the rest of our time. And so we have some sample questions up here. Have you submitted a proposal? What was your experience? Maybe you have a nugget to share with the group. Type it in. Are you currently working on a proposal or considering submitting the proposal? If so, what is the block that you're hitting right now? We have a group of people here. This isn't just the Alan and Louie show. This is now the everyone show. Everyone is coming in here with some sort of piece of knowledge. So maybe you have a question, slap it in. The group can group chat along with us chatting. And then let's see. And then could you propose a solution to that problem? So we have these sample questions here. So this is as interactive as we can get part of the presentation.
Indeed. And I'm actually going to make a poll too. It'll just be have you ever submitted a proposal, just to see what expertise we have or experience we have in the room. So it'll be, I have before, I'm currently working on it, or I intend to submit. I hope that works. Did it work?
I see it.
Can you see it? Okay,
yeah,
nice.
It popped right on my screen.
Beautiful. Yeah, just let us know. Nice. I'm going to submit too.
Did it pop up for you too? That's so cool.
Yeah, it's like in the side. And if you have any ideas kind of that if you are intend to submit or currently working on a proposal, drop your idea in the chat. I think it'd be really cool to see what folks are working on or have plans for in the future. Or if you had a successful, successful run. I told y'all about my failure. So let me know about your successes.
Well, as people are thinking and typing, some of the takeaways that we'll also be giving over to Sakuho is that we put together kind of a sheet, a cheat sheet, template for you that kind of has kind of the breakdown of this presentation. So instead of like you'll have, I want to say, access to the full presentation, but you'll also have a sheet that kind of like breaks down, here's what to think about before submitting. Oh yeah, Alan, get it up.
Sneak peek.
Yeah. And then kind of like, what is that section 1 going to look like? The state the problem. And then having those kind of cliff notes about things to be thinking about and other things to consider. And then after you stated your problem, what could that solution include and what could that look like? And so we have all of that onto kind of distilled, if you will, our presentation into kind of one sheet that can help you kind of think through any proposal or future proposal that you have going on.
Sure. So we've got 6 people in the room who have submitted before. So 6 have submitted. 1 is currently working and 3 intend to submit. So we wish you certainly the best in your intentions, and I hope that you get accepted. Yeah. And of course, learn as much as you can from the process, because it's not all about acceptance. It's definitely about lessons learned, because sometimes we learn more from the failures than we do from the wins.
Very, very true.
So in our final time together, we just want to say thank you all for joining us today. And of course, as Louis said at the beginning, we are going to be here, even though we couldn't talk with you all or see you all face to face as we get nowadays. We will definitely be here to answer any questions or comments, concerns, or anything that you have for us afterwards. And we wish you all the best of luck with your proposals. Louis, anything you want to add?
I just want to remind people, I want to say Arisha has dropped in the chat the program evaluation. And so if you could do Sakuho programming people a huge solid. And by scanning and completing that program evaluation, that would be awesome. We would love for that to get done. Otherwise, I hope your March 5th is delightful, a treasure and a treat, and your weekend is everything you need it to be.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Thank you all so much for coming. Have a good one.
It's like Arisha.
Like, I don't know.
I know.
I just wanted to say thank you for everyone. Thank you for presenting today. It won't let me turn my camera on for some reason. So I don't know what that's about, but thank you so much, Louis and Alan. I really appreciated it. I know everyone else did. As a previous peer advisor at UT Dallas, I was very intrigued by the compensation proposal. I thought that was really, really good. So thank you so much. And like Louis said, make sure to do the survey after the fact. If it's still in the chat, let me make sure it's still there. See it anymore.
Oh, look, y'all can also do the QR code if y'all want. I'll leave that up too. Y'all can scan that. And thank you. I'm seeing who's in the room. Hey, Callie, I see you, girl. Right on. Is the link still in the chat?
I think so.
Oh, okay. I don't know why. I think my laptop got upset.
I see it under a reply to good morning.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Lies were told. Yes, it's still there.
Okay, beautiful.
Everyone, whoever's still here, just make sure to fill out that survey. Thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank y'all.